they were prepared to deal with whatever might come next, or deal with the police, and that they were committed to a certain, they were taking a stand.
We figured they were going to try to do something. So we took ourselves and the children down to the basement, which is the safest part of the house and was in accordance with our strategy for protection.
At 5:30 this morning, warrants were to be served on the move members.
So we eventually took up a position in the rear of the 6200 block of Osage, nearest to Scott Street Parkway. And we heard the police commissioner make an announcement.
What did Commissioner Sanborn say, do you know?
He was telling them to come out.
Did you hear him saying that? What did Delvana say?
She was just arguing and stuff.
What we intended to do was to create a diversion on the roof of the move compound. That diversion was to pour a large amount of water onto the bunker itself to obscure the vision of anyone that may be inside the bunker and prevent them from seeing the insertion teams as they made their way down Osage Avenue.
The water was just pouring down on us in the basement. And I mean, this was not for 10 minutes or half an hour. This was for a long time.
We started down the alley, we got down the alley approximately 15 to 20 feet and shooting started. And then we hit tear gas, which at that time wasn't supposed to be in the plane. So we had to stop and put our gas mask on. Sounded like a lot of firing coming in front of us. I mean, it was straps being squeezed off. And it left rapid shooting. We couldn't believe we could down that alley and make that turn into the house because we had no clue where it was coming from. What we're going to do is we're going to go into the house next to move. Members of the bomb squad would reach a hole into the basement and onto the second floor of 6223. The purpose was to breach a hole, put a pepper fiber through the wall, leaving the first floor for an avenue of escape for the movement.
What we wanted them to do was to come out of the front of 6221 Osage and surrender.
The police next door had a 50 caliber machine gun. When I called the office and I said, listen, they're using a 50 caliber machine gun. They said, you're crazy. I said, no, I'm not crazy. I have fired them and I know what they sound like. And I also know that when it goes off, it shakes the floor in the house that I'm in.
At one time, as a result of an explosion in the back bedroom of the house that we were in, that was our explosion. We breached part of the wall. Officer Miller got the pepper fiber and started. And I remember standing next to him when he pushed it through the wall, about a 4-foot pipe. He got it up and he got it running, but he only got it so far in and he hit something else. And the conclusion that we drew at that time, that they had walls inside the walls.
We had strategies to help protect us. You know, we know how these people come.
We realized that this was not what we anticipated.
They didn't blow 3-inch holes in the party walls. They blew off the whole front of our house.
And then we took a position in the front bedroom of 6223. Move would be to our left as we were looking on the Osage.
Tear gas started coming in. We got the blankets and it was wet, and we had them in the bucket and it was wet, and then we put them over our heads and started laying down.
Well, there was a short law, very short law, and then that's when the shooting started. The cops on either side of us and in the back and across the street in front of us, because they just took over people's houses.
Well, while we were standing there and the pepper fiber was working, on the party wall was the result of automatic gunfire in a semicircle. That wall, the other side of that wall would be the move house. And there was a bunker above us also. But at that time, under those conditions, we drew the conclusion that move was shooting through the walls at us. So we all took refuge and we all fit, almost, into a closet. And I remember climbing, he didn't quite make it in, he was rubbing his leg. What happened is some of the rounds had hit the wooden floor, it was a hardwood floor, and rounds flew up and hit him. Found out later on, but at that time, under those conditions, we thought he was hit. That was the first time I really thought, other than going down the alley, I ain't gonna get out of this closet. I really thought that was it for all of us.
According to police, they shot over 10 6,000 rounds of bullets at us within 90 minutes. Then there was a long lull where, nothing was happening for a long time. And then that's when the cops sent for a state police helicopter.
Did you at some point conclude that the plan had failed?
I think at about 4:45 or 5 o'clock, I had reached the conclusion that we would probably have to wait overnight. That was the point in time that Leo Brooks called me out.
Would you tell us what you heard the managing director tell the mayor?
To the best of my recollection, sir, and he told the mayor that we were recommending and that I had recommended that the best way to go was to use an explosive entry device to blow a hole in the roof so that we could insert gas in through the roof, and also to use this device to hopefully dislodge the bunker because it presented a danger to everyone, and that we intended to use a police helicopter, a state police helicopter.
And what did you think was the fate of the children in terms of blowing a hole in the roof?
My understanding was that it would work and would therefore be safe for the children. I did not have any notion whatsoever that anyone on that site would do anything that would endanger the children.
Did you have any information or belief that there was any gasoline stored on the roof of 6221 Osage Avenue?
I don't recall, I've heard that several times since. I don't recall having been told prior to that there was gasoline stored on the roof.
All the men were upstairs.
All the men were upstairs. And then what happened?
They were still up there, and then they came down. Everybody came down.
All the men came down.
That's when the big bomb went off.
Did you hear the big bomb?
It shook the whole house up.
The house shook. We knew something had happened. It never, ever occurred to me that they had dropped a bomb on us. We felt something, but I didn't know what it was. But, in not too long a period of time, it started getting hot and filling with more and more smoke. And we realized, we started hearing crackling of the fire, and the smoke was getting thicker and thicker. And we realized then that the house was on fire.
At 5 or 6 that evening, did you tell the fire commissioner to let the bunker burn?
I did not order the fire commissioner to do anything. I requested of him that if we let the roof burn to get the bunker, could we then, subsequent to that, control the fire? I wanted to get the bunker. I wanted to be able to somehow have tactical superiority without sacrificing any lives if it were at all possible.
Sambor said to me very briefly, if we let the bunker burn, can you still put out the fire? And the extent of fire at the time, the only thing I could judge it from my own experience was that, yes, I think we could. However, there was no way to be really sure, because if it had already breached the roof, we had a spread that we couldn't handle because we could not access the property, and consequently the fire started to spread through the cocktail, across the adjoining alleys, across the street, down the block. Very predictable, but we could still not access it. We didn't have access to the Osage Avenue or its environments until somewhere around 10 o'clock in the evening.
That's the closest I've ever been to a large fire. The heat would pop the glass. You pop it. Or in the beginning, until that was explained or anything else, you couldn't interpret. Is that a gunshot or is it not? You don't know. So now the homes on Pine Street are starting to catch. And the move house and the house we were in is rolling. What I mean by rolling, the fire's coming out of the windows and rolling up. I'm just thinking to myself, there's no way anybody can get out of that.
All that smoke and stuff was coming in. That's when the fire's getting heavy and all that stuff is coming in.
We heard over the 150 radio that they're coming out, they're coming out.
The adults were hollering out that we were coming out, we were bringing the children out.
They started hollering things in, the kids coming out.
I observed a male, a tall, I thought he was tall, shirtless male come out of I didn't see him come out of the house, but I saw him come out of that area from the back of the moved compound.
You said that Brad tried to take Tommaso out?
Mm-hmm.
How was he trying to take Tommaso out?
He was going to open the thing, and then Tommaso was taking him out, and then they started shooting again, and then they brought him back in.
And what was he carrying? He had a rifle in his hand.
From, about how far were you from him, would you say, sir?
I would say it's approximately 75 to 100 yards in that area there.
100 yards?
Yes.
Okay. Could you observe what type of rifle it was?
Not from seeing the rifle, all right, but from the report of the rifle, I could.
Did you then hear the report of the rifle after you saw it?
Yes.
Did you see a muzzle flash?
No.
Okay, what did you hear?
I believe it to be 4 quick shots from a 22 caliber rifle.
And the instant that we could be seen trying to come out, the cops immediately started shooting at us. You could hear the bullets hitting all around us, forcing us back into the burning building. This happened a number of times, at least twice. Started getting so bad in there with the fire spreading quickly, and the smoke, that you're faced with a situation where, you're either going to be burned alive or possibly shot to death. So we tried to get out again.
And then, out of the smoke, the first person I saw was Ramona.
I got out, I got Birdie out, and everybody was right behind me trying to come out.
Well, I saw Ramona come over the fence.
And she had started to walk down and stop, and she would wave with her hand like this.
And then on the driveway, I see, was later identified as Birdie, come out of the fire. And he literally came through the smoke and the fire.
And there was a board on fire there, and he hopped over that, and he started coming down.
At one time, Ramona reaches over the fence
And tried to pick Birdie up.
and they slipped and they left back. And he fell backwards.
And I remember he didn't get a chance to put his hands down to break his fall.
Tommy Mellor's right there, Mike Percy's right with us. Certain time he didn't get up. So I had a shotgun. I
I
said,
said, Tommy, here, take my shotgun. I said, I'm going to go get the kid. And at one point that I start out to get Birdie, and that's the first time I realized Officer Terzi was behind me. He grabbed my left shoulder. He said, don't go after Jim, it's a trap.
I took my silver shoot off, right? That's what I had at the time. I had a 357 Magnum. And I would turn around and keep looking at Tommy.
I was right in the middle of the driveway looking down, covering both Jimmy and Officer Terzi and Birdie and Ramona.
Birdie eventually gets up. Now he's starting to walk.
We're trying to say to him, son, come over here, come over here. We're trying to get him to come to us.
So I ran out and I swooped him underneath his left arm. And I'll never forget it. The first thing he said to me is, don't shoot me, don't shoot me.
I was locked in on Officer Miller's face. My back's towards move.
I'm praying that I'm not going to see a change of expression.
And I made like a left to go out to Osage. He then started to say to me that I'm hungry. I want something to eat. I'm hungry.
That's the part I have a hard time with this kid went through. I'm hungry after we went through all that. I'm hungry.
Mr. Bergheimer, after the bomb was dropped, let's say 5:27 that afternoon, did you fire any weapon that day?
Sir, I never fired my weapon the entire day.
Officer Miller, same question to you, sir?
Also the same answer.
So for me to explain things to certain people, that's my contact. And then later on I found out there was other kids in there. And in essence, I was a brick wall away. So something, honestly, do I think about move every day? No. But when it's brought up, it's like it happened yesterday.
And now I'd like to introduce our panel for the evening. We start with Lynn Washington. Lynn Washington Jr. is an award-winning journalist. Come up, Lynn. Lynn Washington is an award-winning journalist, specializes in analytical investigative coverage of issues involving social justice, race-based inequities, the news media, and law. His reporting has included news coverage from 4 of the world's 7 continents. His news career spanned positions from reporter to executive editor. He is the heart, soul, host, and producer of the podcast Move, Untangling the Tragedy, which uses his 50 years of covering Move for the Daily News, Tribune, and other outlets to inform the work. He's been a Temple professor for 28 years. And Barbara Grant. In a 35-plus year career, Barbara Grant has been an award-winning journalist and strategic communications professional. She worked as a reporter for Channel 29, 17, and WDAS. She was program director for WURD Radio, planning editor for Eyewitness News, managing editor of Inquirer News Tonight, independent producer for BET News, and news director for WDAS Radio. She served as director of communications to the mayor of Philadelphia and the superintendent of the Philadelphia School District. And Maida Cassandra Odom. Maida, come up. She is the first Black woman to successfully pursue a writing and reporting career at the Philadelphia Inquirer. She worked at the Akron Beacon Journal, the Chicago Tribune, the Daily News of Dayton. Before joining the Inquirer in 1978, she served as a member of the journalism department faculty at the Klein College of Media and Communication at Temple until her retirement in 2019. While here, she expanded the department's internship program and developed a program to send Temple students into public schools and bring Philadelphia high school students into Temple's classrooms. And Pete Kane. Pete Kane grew up in North Philadelphia and started working in the mailroom of WCAU TV. He attended night school and after 7 years moved to the engineering department assigned to the news department, where he worked as technician and photojournalist. He covered some of the biggest stories in Philadelphia in his over 40-year career, including the Move bombing. His reports were informing Mayor Good as Good watched Channel 10 from his home office on May 13, 1985. Please give our panelists a hand. I want to welcome you all. And I want to start with a very simple question. I want to pose it to everyone because you covered this. As you covered this tragedy that happened, did you see it as an attack on Move, or did you see it as an attack on the Black community? Lynn, I'll start with you.
Very good question, Solomon. Well, 2 things. One, it was a tragedy, but it was also an atrocity. And throughout the day, I was alternating between this is an attack on Move, this is outrageous, but I also saw it as an attack on the Black community. One of the things that I've noted over the years with this is that underlying this controversy were issues of race, racism, and one of the manifestations of that, which is double standards of justice. Over the years, there were instances where Move was penalized, but those who were victimizing them were not. And that issue of double standards of justice was not exclusive to Move, because a lot of the other parties were the inequities based on racism that were impacting other members of the Black community in Philadelphia.
Barbara?
I agree with Lynn that it was both. It was both. I mean, it was clearly an attack on MOVE, the run-up to May 13th. We had been covering for weeks and months. And if you listen to the MOVE family talk about it, Ramona, not just Ramona, but a lot of folk who were speaking in those run-up weeks, you knew that they understood that they were going to be attacked. I mean, in the same way that happened in 1978 at the first MOVE confrontation. And yet, at the time I was the news director of WDAS, and quite honestly, we were the voice of the Black community. And so we were hearing not just from the MOVE family, we were hearing also from the neighbors constantly who were trying to get health issues resolved and L&I issues resolved. And we were also talking to the police and to a lot of Black cops who were saying that there was a lot of misinformation floating around in terms of what was happening at MOVE. There were rumors that there were tunnels under the MOVE house that people could escape from. And if you were there that day and that night, you saw there was really a systematic kind of removal of anyone who could see and let people know what was happening. And so there was a plan, as ill-conceived as it was, that was devised. And the recklessness that was used was clearly something that, at least from a Black radio station's point of view, wouldn't have happened in a white neighborhood.
Nita? Can you hear me? I can, yes.
Okay. There is no crime for which the penalty is being water canned, shot at, bombed, and burned up. That's it. Okay. So the lack of humanity that goes into the way this happened, obviously shows a lack of regard for the humanity. So that is basically clearly race-based. And much is going to be made of the fact that it was a Black city government. But it was a federal explosive dropped from a state helicopter by a white police, Philadelphia police officer. What I said was real brief, so I'll say it again. There is no crime for which the penalty is being water cannoned, shot at, bombed, and burned up. Okay? Let's start there. So that the lack of humanity involved has to deal with racial issues that are worldwide and long-standing. The execution of what happened, there were federally supplied explosives dropped from a state helicopter by a white Philadelphia police officer. Now, much is going to be made of the fact that it was a Black mayor and a Black managing director, but the reality is all levels of government go into this inhumane punishment. And in the history of our country, as I've read, there are no instances. You see instances like Waco, where the government doesn't know how to deal with people, but it doesn't start out at that level of brutality, and the fact that there's municipal, federal, and state level inhumanity.
Pete?
It's tough. I mean, even watching this was tough for me because I spent 24 hours in the house there and I watched the whole thing unfold. And the one thing I can remember overnight, I went in that Sunday night and that morning at 2, 3 in the morning, I heard Ramona on the bullhorn asking for Barbara Grant, Odom, Harvey Clark, Vernon Odom, a lot of Black reporters. They'd be willing to, to talk, to be able to come out. None of that was passed on to these people because I think it would have made a difference if they were willing to talk to people who look like them, but none of that was passed on. Even when I called my station, I was on the phone for 24 hours, my TV station, and I was letting them know what was going on. But for me, to watch that fire burn, that bomb was dropped, and still hiding in the house, I watched them all day long hit that bunker with water tearing it apart. When that bomb was dropped, it was 45 minutes after that bomb was dropped, they put water in that bunker. So that was frustrating to me. Even when I went on TV and I told Larry King, the move house is burning, homes on either side is burning, the mayor even heard it. They were calling the TV station, where's your cameraman? We'll make sure he's safe. I never gave anybody an address where I was at, because I knew where I would have been. So for me to let the fire burn was devastating, because it could have been put out. So if it happened in another neighborhood, I covered news for 35 years in the streets of Philly. That was the worst day of my life. I could have walked away from it May 13th. I kept doing it because, like the director of the Sun said earlier, there were not many people of color in TV that could tell the story of what was going on. I lived 10 blocks from Temple on Cecil B. Moore when Move went down. So I was living in a black community. The only reason I became a cameraman was I wanted to tell the story from inside out, not from outside in. And all my life, Barbara and everybody else will tell you, I've always done the stories in the black community, positive and negative. So for me, May 13th, I mean, I was in tears here watching this because, like I said earlier, it's like it was yesterday. You know what I mean? You still smell the tear gas. I went to those 10,000 bullets. They whizzed by me all, you know, for an hour and a half. To me, it was more than an hour and a half. It was for 6-7 hours, off and on. So to me, if it happened in Northeast Philly and South, it wouldn't have happened like that. It happened in the black community for a reason. To me, what happened August 8th of '78 was retaliation for Officer Ram being killed. You know what I mean? That's what happened. I was going to be a cop 2 years earlier. I was going to be in the police department. I'm glad God put me to where he put me, because that way I can tell the stories of what affects my people.
Pete, I want to ask you this question. I want you to give me a brief answer to this. How did you get to cover what happened that day, May 13th, 1985? Why were you sent?
What happened is that on that Friday at our station, where it was that the police were going to go out to Osage Avenue and talk to MOVE members out of 6220 Osage Avenue. The plan was to grab the kids as they went from Move House to Cow Creek Park. So we're going to stand by if they went in to talk Move Out. My pager went off and I came in from church that Sunday at 12 o'clock, 2 o'clock I was out there. We were not allowed on 62nd Street or Osage. We're at 62nd and Pine. I befriended someone out there. I need to get into a house to see Osage Avenue. This gentleman, he knocked on a couple of doors. Most people said no. This one family, Austin family, said, yeah, he can come in. But when we leave, he has to leave. That was 8:30 Sunday night. They were evacuated at 9:30. I stayed in the house. And what I did was I put my microphone outside the second floor window, put the blinds up 8 inches, kept my camera back. I was in the dark. So they never knew I was in the house.
Okay. Lynn, you've been covering this for a long time, 50 years.